Hello everyone, welcome to the Marmor webinar series. My name is Irfan, I'm an analyst with Marmor. Marmor is a majority-owned subsidiary of Kuwait Financial Center Markaz, established in 2010. Marmor has developed full-fledged research capabilities covering multiple areas such as infrastructure research, economic research, capital market studies, policy analysis, etc., focused on the MENA region. Marmor is focused on serving the interdisciplinary knowledge needs of its clients and stakeholders. So once again, welcome to this session on innovations and Islamic finance. Questions can be asked anytime during the course of the webinar and will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Recording will be sent in a day or two and uploaded in the Marmor website and YouTube channel as well. And in case you have any questions which were not answered during the course of the webinar, you can email them to inaheem@markaz.com. It is spelled as INAHEEM@markaz.com. Okay, so now we start the webinar session. The topic for today's session is innovations in Islamic finance. We'll be covering three subtopics under this. First one is the recent Islamic finance innovations. The second one is the potential areas in Islamic finance that require innovations. And the third one would be the challenges that are hindering or that are an obstacle in the path of innovations. The first topic, recent innovations, we'll be talking about the recent deals or transactions that were completed in the GCC region, and we have kept this discussion limited to the GCC region transactions, and will not be discussing any deals that occurred in in other parts of the world. The first deal that we will be talking about is the recent Sukuk issuance by Saudi Telecom. This is a hybrid structure. This is the structure of the sukuk. It is a combination of Mudariba and Muraba sukuk. Now the Mudaraba contract, we do not have the exact ratios based on which that each contract plays the role in the entire sukuk issuance. However, it is a combination. The combination of this sukuk is quite common in the GCC region, but the structural innovation in this case is in terms of the predominance or dominance of the Mudaraba part, unlike the earlier issuances where Mudaraba part was only included to facilitate the trading of the sukuk issuance in the secondary market. Because if it's primarily a Murabaha based contract, then in that case, because it's a debt based transaction, the Sharia restricts from the instrument being traded in the secondary market. Okay, the features about this telecom or this sukuk is first one, like I said, is the structural innovation, which is a lot of significance given to Mudaraba contract instead of the Muraba contract like the issuances earlier before to the Saudi Telecom sukuk. The Mudaraba instrument or Mudaraba contract governs the profit or the coupon regular periodic payments part to the sukuk holders. The essence of this deal is that it is very close to the Islamic finance principles, which is profit and risk loss, profit and risk sharing, or profit and loss sharing. And this is one reason why it got wider acceptability among the investors. And because the sukuk holders are exposed to the risk or the performance of the assets held by the Saudi Telecom company, the practitioner structuring this instrument had to come up with it required additional structural requirements to reduce the risk component for the sukuk holders. And that's where the Muraba part came in, where the Muraba part was included for the capital protection of the sukuk holders. And it also had a cash collateral part of it. This is basically a sort of guarantee where another financial institution gets involved, providing guarantee to the Muraba part of the transaction. This sukuk was completely asset light, and that is because there were no asset light in the sense there was no transfer of assets from the Saudi Telecom company to the SPV, which is an usual practice. One of the reasons why this didn't happen is because of the nature of the transaction, it being predominantly a Mudaraba based sukuk. The next transaction that we will be talking about is Amlak finance restructuring. Uh, This is this post the 2008 financial crisis, Amlak faced the risk of erosion of its equity capital due to a significant impairment of its investment property portfolio, and it also faced the risk of insolvency in the form of depositors run by its depositors. And because of these reasons, it was also suspended from being trading on the Dubai financial market in 2008. One of the biggest challenge in restructuring this deal was to maintain Sharia compliance in the entire process of restructuring, and also involvement of several Islamic financing deposit structures, which included murabas, mudarabas, and syndicated wakalas, made it a real challenge to restructure it so that the profit and loss uh, feature of the entire deposits is written throughout the process. Okay, and this was achieved by depositors converting their debt into a convertible contingent instrument. This is a hybrid instrument, or in Islamic finance terms, it is a mudarba instrument. Also, it is also a mudarba instrument, but it's also used in conventional finance. It's known as COCO bonds. Okay, one feature of this instrument is its ability to observe losses. In case there is losses, there is loss incurred by the company, then in that case the principal can be written down. So it's not a case where the deposit the principal is guaranteed. So it does have the feature of observing the losses. And this also, the Mudarba arrangement or the instrument that was issued also had the benefit, the also had a feature where the participants could benefit from the value growth. That is because the depositors were guaranteed certain percentage in the profit. If Amlak was generating higher profits, then higher return was passed on to the subscribers of this instrument. Okay, and like I said, it also had the of this entire deal was Sharia compliant. The entire restructuring process was Sharia compliant, and it maintained exposure to both potential gains and equal sharing of risk. Because of the ability to observe the loss, the feed of because of the loss observing feature of the instrument that were issued, Amlak Finance was able to retain healthy equity position, and also the leverage ratio was in check to meet all the regulatory requirements. So because of this instrument and restructuring the way it was completed, it again resumed trading on the Dubai financial market. The next innovation in this field, the recent innovation in this field would be the Nasdaq Dubai Murabaha platform. Earlier, to avail any sort of liquidity or any immediate financing or or financing requirement of the Islamic financial institutions was met only through either London Metal Exchange or through Dubai commodities exchange. Okay, this is the Muraba structure where a client requiring immediate financing would contact the financier. The financier would purchase, usually in this case, in the case of Nasdaq Dubai Muraba, they are purchasing Wakala certificates. But in case of commodities exchange like London Metal Exchange or Dubai Commodities Market, they would purchase commodities by making the spot payment and sell it to the client on a deferred payment basis. The financier would add certain profit component, add certain profit to the sale price, and the client in turn would immediately liquidate the commodities in the over the on the exchange and avail cash immediately. This is the normal Muraba structure, and this was the practice even in terms of liquidity financing for Islamic financial institutions. The key innovation part in this particular transaction is that the commodities, the buying and selling of commodities or equities that is practiced over the metal exchange and the Dubai commodities market was replaced by Wakala certificates, which are instruments, you could say, like Sukuk instruments with some assets, underlying assets, and these were bought and sold over on this Dubai Murabaha platform. Okay, so like I said, this was the regional alternative to London Metal Exchange and Dubai Multi Commodity Centers, and these are Sharia compliant Wakala certificates that are traded. And the biggest benefit of this particular instrument was this: the price risk was eliminated in by trading in this instrument, because the commodities and equities are the price fluctuate on real-time basis. So the financial institutions availing the finances as well as the clients that who are looking for financing were exposed to the price risk because of the fluctuation. However, this was eliminated in this particular transaction because the prices do not change on real-time basis. You can relate this to NAV of funds, you could say, which are probably calculated at the end of the day and do not change on real-time basis. Okay, and the time zone in which Nasdaq Dubai platform is based offers a unique flexibility in terms of being able to cater to different markets like Asia, Middle East, and African markets because of its time zone it's located in. And the Sharia compliant methods, sorry, it also allows the use of various Sharia compliant asset classes as underlying assets for Murabaha. Yeah, so it's not just restricted to one. The underlying assets could be across or can be different type of assets, not just restricted to one type of asset. The next transaction that we will be talking about is the Lulu deal. This deal was arranged by Al Raji Capital and it involves a sale and leaseback structure of a Lulu hypermarket which is constructed by Al Mutlaq Group. It is a simple transaction. It's a transaction which is very common in both conventional and Islamic finance market, but still it opens doors to investors like I mean, individual investors to able to participate in the commercial real estate. Some of the features, now, like I said, it is a common transaction. Sale and leaseback is a common structure that is used in both Islamic and conventional finance, but yet it is of a innovation because of the region where it took place, which is in Saudi Arabia. This provides an opportunity for institutional investment in commercial real estate in Saudi Arabia, because, which is as the market is very underdeveloped and highly fragmented and do not have many exit options. This deal provides that option, and it is also a Sharia compliant approach to exit from large scale commercial real estate products or real estate projects in Saudi Arabia. And for developers, it offers an opportunity to exit their existing projects and in a Sharia compliant way, and also redeploy their capital in new ones. And for businesses, something like Lulu hypermarkets, where they were able to monetize their uh, real estate facility and yet uh, retain the option to use the facility for their business and use the capital from use the cash flow from the availed by monetizing the project for other purposes. And the unique option for where the seller has the first preference to buy back does not reduces the exposure of not being able to avail or buy back the facility in future. So this ends the session where we are talking about the different innovative deals that have taken place in this in the GCC region. Now we'll talk about the potential areas of innovation. We'll go by each segment of Islamic finance. For the first one, we'll talk about is Islamic banking. Now, according to estimates, the profitability of Islamic banks is 19% lower than conventional banks, which is primarily attributable to the higher expenses incurred by the Islamic banks, and also because of one reason that can be attributable is a lower product holding. The average product holding per customer in Islamic banks is 2.1 as against conventional banks, where the average product holding per customer is close to about 4.1. So innovation is required to increase the size of the baskets and offer create new products and offer which can provide cross-selling opportunities, as higher average product per customer can result in would ultimately result in higher profitability for the Islamic banks. And innovation is required both in the areas of retail and trade finance. Now, though there have been certain attempts to come up with some certain innovative trade finance products, they have not gone well with the in the market, you could say, because of primarily because of Sharia compliance, because some products that were created or that were structured were Sharia compliance in certain markets and were not Sharia compliant in certain markets. So that was one reason why they could not come up with a widely, that is one reason why they could not come up with a widely ranged product. Sorry for the break there. We had a technical issue. Started. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. We had a technical problem because of which the connection was lost. So we'll continue the presentation. Like I already mentioned, in the area of Islamic banking, both in the segments of retail and trade finance, innovation is required. Sukuk has been one area which has seen a lot of innovation in terms of coming up with hybrid sukuks, convertible sukuks, and also perpetual sukuks, and issuances involving assets, in intangible assets such as airtime vouchers, broadband units, and intellectual properties. However, still the existing sukuk structures are unable to support large size issuances in the absence of viable assets. One thing that we could relate to is the Saudi Telecom sukuk that I discussed earlier. Now that was an asset-light sukuk issuance, but again, that does not the structure does not lend itself well to a large size issuance. Okay, so we need the industry practitioners need to come up with new structures, innovative structures that could cover new asset types, new asset classes, and also which are acceptable in new markets at the same time. Another area that requires innovation or that has lacked any sort of momentum completely is the Waqf segment. The global Waqf assets are estimated in excess of USD 1 trillion, and mostly the Waqf assets are either underdeveloped and poorly managed. So we need innovative instruments and products so that the industry practitioners could benefit from these assets, and at the same time benefit from these assets by utilizing these assets, and at the same time contribute to the growth of these assets. Funds. This is area again. This has been an extremely challenging area for Islamic finance asset managers because of absence of product diversification. Basically, the funds that exist are limited to commodities and sukuk and Islamic funds. So we need innovative solutions so that conventional funds can be accessed, or feeder funds and other Sharia compliant structures, investment products can be accessed. But now, socially responsible funds are also an area which can be which Islamic funds can try to access, as they very readily lend themselves to the Islamic finance structure. A slight tweaking in the existing socially responsible funds could offer opportunities for Islamic funds to fund in them. And also, they need the funds, the industry practitioners operating in this segment have to look for innovative structures to access, like I discussed earlier, of the Waqf assets and also the Takaful assets. Takaful, now the existing products in the Takaful segment is plain vanilla, like mostly it's limited to family and medical and motor insurance. However, the existing product basket has to be extended to cover wider range, including catering to requirements like wealth management and educational planning schemes and retirement plans, and complete the existing Takaful operators can also have to try to come up with innovative products to achieve not just provide insurance or related product, but also have a component of savings and investment in them. The final part of the presentation is the challenges that are hindering innovation. The first most important, or the big challenge that is restricting innovative product inception of innovative products in this area of finance is lack of harmonization in Sharia interpretation. Because there are different interpretations of Sharia. Now, some products developed in certain markets may not be may not be accepted in the other markets. In the other markets, so a uniform Sharia laws across the regions would be an ideal way to come up with innovative products. But as of now, the different interpretations does cause a challenge to product innovation. Now, regulatory supervisory framework, the existing framework in terms of regulations, monetary policies, and taxation laws and things, and regulations, and even the legal laws are somewhere more lend themselves well to development of products, or facilitate easier if it's a debt based or conventional products. But since the Islamic financial products are the exact how exactly would the tax laws would be applicable, or how exactly the policies would be, how would impact this would they impact these in products is an unknown area, which also which also poses a challenge to coming up with products, because it's not very clear as to how these regulations can impact. And another biggest challenge faced is lack of Sharia scholars, as with financial sector expertise, or with the knowledge of finance. There are obviously Sharia scholars available, but them being aware of finance as well is in real scarcity. One more challenge is that the industry practitioners always try to mimic the while developing products, always try to mimic the existing conventional product. This is one challenge, because of which they have not come up with very different new products. One reason could be because of the existing regulatory and tax frameworks, which are more supportive to the conventional financial products. But still, this again poses a challenge to the development of the product. So this is we have come to the end of the presentation. So in case you have any questions, you may post the questions now. Thank you. Okay, we have a question from one of our participants. The question is, are there any steps being taken to counter some of the are there any steps being taken to counter some of the challenges that you have enumerated? The answer is yes. In terms of harmonization, there have been a few regulatory bodies that have been incorporated to facilitate harmony of Sharia interpretation. But again, depending on the region, there is still certain conflict, like probably uh, like the IOFI body, which is and the IFSB, or regulatory body, which is there in the based in GCC region. Uh, they do offer certain harmony in the region in terms of products that are developed. However, still there remains a lack of harmony between what is developed in Malaysia and what is accepted here in GCC region. In terms of regulatory and supervisory framework, yeah, there have been certain initiatives taken by a few countries where they have modified their regulatory laws or tax laws to facilitate the Islamic financial products or for the smoother functioning of the Islamic finance products. I hope that answers the question. Uh, are there any more questions? Uh, okay, we have another question. Is there any particular innovation with regards to real estate financing, Islamic finance, or Islamic housing mortgages, perhaps? In terms of Islamic housing mortgages, there hasn't been any recent innovation. The structure was has what the prevalent structure was developed initially, and that the same structure has retained. Islamic mortgage financing is provided in Islamic through by Islamic banks through either using a combination of a musharaka and a ijara structure, or it is also sometimes done only through an ijara structure or a murabaha structure. So these are the three contracts through which Islamic housing finance is done. It is depending on the region or depending on the financial institution, the structure might vary, but these are the predominant structures that are used for Islamic mortgage financing. Okay, we have another question. It is how is the future place for Islamic finance products in the GCC market? The future for Islamic finance products is surely very positive in the GCC region because of the huge Muslim population and the demand for Islamic financial products because of their religious reasons. So the demand is surely the future is surely positive for the Islamic finance products in the region. Okay, we have another question. What would be the role of technology in Islamic finance innovation in general and innovation in particular? The role of technology in Islamic finance, or to be precise, in Islamic banking, can be in terms of reaching out to more, increasing the distribution channels or reaching out to the customers, and also in terms of reducing by offering innovative products like in banking, like I wouldn't say exactly innovative, but updating the technology because one thing the existing Islamic banking practice is accused of is that technology is quite outdated. So upgrading that technology and offering new solutions in terms of mobile banking and net banking uh, would be beneficial for Islamic banks and in terms of making it more appealing to their clients or to their end users. So we have come to the end of the webinar session. Thank you everyone for participating in it, and like I said at the beginning, you can download the webinar session from our webinar series website on our website. Thank you very much. Thank you.